I have been concerned with the coronavirus, probably like a lot of us. I heard this morning and wanted to go over the body language. So let's get to it. This is a little concerning, so we're going to go over it, and then I will link the full video in the description.
All that ahead, but first, the United States has put new travel restrictions in place as the first coronavirus death here is confirmed. A new case is also confirmed in Chicago, and the White House is planning for possible shortages of some key drugs and medical components. Vice President Mike Pence, tapped by President Trump to lead the response, tells me the risk to most Americans still remains low.
There's inconsistencies into what Mike Pence is saying compared to what the CDC has said and what other mainstream media has also stated.
Let me ask you about some of the news, the important news this weekend. And of course, you have lifted travel restrictions from parts of Italy, parts of South Korea, Iran.
Right.
How are you going to enforce this?
We used what's called Section 212F with China to.
Let's talk about that right there. He already knew the question, so he already had the answer pre-planned. But when he's talking about this, he doesn't seem to come off that he really understands what he's talking about.
Right.
How are you going to?
He says right, because he already knows what the question is ahead of time, so again, the answer's pre-planned.
Enforce this.
We used what's called Section 212F with China to.
He kind of shakes his head no. He's just not comfortable talking about it because it's new.
Suspend all travel back into the United States by non-citizens or legal residents. And the president's using that authority with.
You see his head nodding yes. He's congruent with what he's saying, right? So what comes next is questionable.
Regard to Iran, we're banning all travel into.
That was a full no.
Or legal residents. And the president's using that authority with regard to Iran. We're banning all travel into the United States. Even foreign nationals that have visited Iran in the last 14 days will be stopped at our border, will not be allowed to come.
Will not be allowed. That's right. That's congruent.
Into the United States. But for Italy and South
Huge sigh.
Korea that are seeing a rising number of coronavirus cases, the president wanted to use the authority to issue a travel advisory. It's called Level 4, to tell the American people do not travel to those affected areas.
Look at his forehead. See, not a lot of lines. This is very rehearsed. He knew what he was going to say.
In Italy and in South Korea. But we're also making that connected to a screening process that we've already
little dance in there.
Initiated discussions with both countries.
I understand that the FDA sent testing kits to the 50 states and then called them back and said, well, wait a minute, there are 3 parts to this test, but one of those parts is actually defective. So don't do the testing. Wait on the testing. I mean,
pay attention to his hands, his thumbs. He's caressing them for comfort.
Is that just incompetence on the part of the FDA?
Well, what I can tell you is that in my
dancing again. This is the meat and potatoes. He has information. The question is, will he give it to us?
With governors, and I've spoken to all of the governors that have been handling people coming back into our country as Americans have returned from China in particular, is that we
in particular,
we believe we are in the process.
He's shaking his head. Yes, it's congruent.
Of resolving the issues about testing kits. In fact, as the director of the FDA announced yesterday, we have now approved a new arrangement.
A little bit of a half smile there.
So that states can conduct these tests on their own. But as we speak, literally more than 15,000 kits are going out.
Kits.
To the relevant areas, and we'll soon be sending another 50,000 that are going to be made commercially available out to states.
I mean, was the president upset that we couldn't do accurate testing initially? You know, South Korea has testing from your car, your drive-through testing. China says you can test from home. We haven't done the testing.
Well, we've done a fair amount of testing.
500 tests?
But as, look,
he's dancing. and moving his papers around a little bit. Highly stressed there.
We've actually screened 47,000 people coming through designated airports in the country and
Still dancing.
And done testing at airports. But the new challenges that we have is we want to make testing kits available to local.
Did you see him raise his eyebrows there? He wants you to believe him. Believe me. Did you see him with his eyebrows there and like leaned in forward? Believe me. Believe me.
Healthcare providers, so that if someone presents with a respiratory illness, that they'll not only be tested for the flu, but they'll also be tested for the coronavirus.
Okay, so now that we are beginning this real ramp up of the testing, is it fair to say that we will likely hear of thousands of new cases in the United States?
He was caressing a little bit there with his thumb, still for comfort. It isn't quite as extreme as it was before, but he's still caressing.
I don't want to.
Huge dancing there. Moving, uncomfortable. Meat and potatoes are here. He's not gonna tell us.
Put numbers on it, but there'll be more cases. But I want to assure your viewers.
He wants to assure us. So I'm just gonna go ahead and go on a whim and say, probably shouldn't be assured here, guys.
People across this country that we're ready.
Now he really does believe they're ready. But what are they ready for, right?
And the reality is that
huge sigh. Shoulders went back.
the United States is more prepared than any other nation in the world.
So
Let's watch that again.
More prepared than any other nation in the world.
Do you believe him?
So in the coming days and weeks, if we see thousands of new cases, should we be not concerned?
What a weird way to word that. Should we be not concerned? Why wouldn't you just say, should we be concerned? Not, should we not be concerned? Should we be not concerned?
We know that there will be many more cases.
Let's watch that.
Not concerned.
Well, we know that there will be many.
Ooh, he seems nervous there. Starting to see a little bit of that. Lines there. Very nervous. Leaning in. He wants you to believe him.
Many more cases. But we continue to remain hopeful that
he remains hopeful. So, should we?
Because of the vigilance of our local health officials, because of the efforts of state leaders and
his blinking's been okay. He's starting to blink a lot.
CDC and HHS, that will be able to mitigate the spread of that. And that's the reason why the president directed the immediate increase in the production of masks.
Okay, here we go with the mask talk. Now, I've heard all weekend, they're not going to be able to protect us. The masks won't protect us. The masks, do not buy the masks. The masks are needed for the doctors. Do not buy masks. They will not help you. So, let's listen.
From the streets of New York City to airports around the nation, we're seeing more and more people donning face masks after a handful of cases of the new coronavirus landed in the U.S.
I feel a little bit more safe having it. I know it's not 100%, but I think it would be unwise not to take any precaution I can.
While it may make some people feel better to have them, the CDC says wearing a face mask to protect yourself from this new coronavirus is actually not recommended.
It is unnecessary. As we said, in the United States, the risk to any individual American is extremely low.
That's because there's not much evidence that face masks benefit the general population.
We have a stockpile of some 43 million, but we're already making arrangements with several American companies to begin to produce almost that amount on a monthly basis.
The FDA.
So is he saying we need a mask? Because that's the way I take it. So who are we supposed to believe?
Has developed a list of 150 prescription drugs that we soon will not be able to provide because all of these active ingredients are made in China.
Do you guys see his thumb? Comforting himself here.
soon will not be able to provide because all of these active ingredients are made in China. What will the government do about protecting Americans and their health, given the fact that so many drugs are produced overseas?
When we came into office, fully half of our international trade deficit was with China, and the president's taken a strong stand to change that. The new Phase 1 China deal is a beginning in that. But we'll be meeting this Monday with the heads of pharmaceutical companies across.
I mean, he's incongruent there, but I'm pretty sure we could find that information out if they're meeting with these people. So, take that however you want. He doesn't answer the question. He talks about a meeting that they're going to have, about our issues we've had with China, about trade deals. But he doesn't really ever answer the question about the 150 medicines from China
across this country. And I've spoken to members of Congress who've expressed the very same concern.
I'm going to get back to that because
So they're concerned because he doesn't give a straight answer, but he talks to Congress and they're concerned.
supply chain issue is real important, but you just said the risk is low. It doesn't seem like Bill Gates thinks that. Bill Gates wrote in the New England Journal of Medicine, this is starting to look like, quote, a once-in-a-century pathogen. That's why he's donating $100 million for the treatment and testing.
Well,
Okay, he is dancing. And when he lifted up his rear end, he's very uncomfortable. He doesn't want to talk about Bill Gates.
His assessment doesn't agree with our health experts, but I'm grateful for his generosity.
He stops. Nothing else. That's it.
I am. I mean, we're all in this together.
We're all in this together. Do you believe him?
And I frankly am grateful.
Did you see the little shimmy, the little shift? I don't know if I believe him.
I am. I mean, we're all in this together. And I frankly am grateful for the spirit that I have heard from many public officials at every level, Republicans and Democrats, who have said, this is a time to set aside.
He gives a slight giggle. I don't understand why that's funny. See it? It didn't last long. So is he lying?
At every level, Republicans and Democrats, who have said, this is a time to set aside recriminations or blame and really work the problem. That's what the president has tasked us to do.
And yet the critics of the president have ramped up the politics once again. Bernie Sanders is on the campaign trail saying you don't have the qualifications to be running this task force. Alexandria Ocasio.
Watch his eyes here. He doesn't blink a lot while she's talking. But he'll start blinking a lot here again. And that's meat and potatoes of stuff he has to say. But he's not going to tell us.
Cortez says, you don't understand science.
I will tell you,
he's going to tell us, but he never addresses what she says to him.
The job the president has given me to bring this team together to drive forward.
Let's watch that, his lip.
The job the president has given me to bring this team together to drive forward to his objective to bring a whole of government response, the full resources of the federal government to bear.
Do you see that whole forehead there? He's stressed, but he wants you to believe him.
Full of government response, the full resources that
lifted up his eyebrows. You believe in me, right?
The federal government to bear on the coronavirus in this country is going to be my singular focus.
Mr. Vice President, let me ask you about the president's conversations with Xi Jinping, because the president has said that he has spoken with him a couple of times. Has the president asked him why they're giving us such disinformation, why they have played this down from the get-go and perhaps made this worse?
Let me say the president has a very strong relationship with President Xi. And our hearts go out to the families that have lost.
That's congruent.
Loved ones in China and to those that are struggling with the coronavirus. It originated there, and China's been working to address the issue. There was some encouraging news that...
I don't believe him. There's some encouraging news, he says. But the way his body language is saying it, I don't know. He's hesitant.
Some encouraging news that there were actually fewer new cases in
Did you see him lean forward as well? He wants you to believe him.
In China,
Raise the
than in the
eyebrows.
balance of the rest of the world.
And we believe them?
Well, we had CDC officials that were just in China a few short weeks ago, and they
This is where there's an inconsistency. I'll play the CDC's comment in regards to this. Says something completely opposite of what Mike Pence is saying.
CDC wants to be on the ground in China. It's probably Redfield's biggest frustration.
Right now, there's no evidence. It's definitely not controlled. And the sooner we can help them get it under control, the better for the whole world.
So I guess that does raise the question, why are we sitting here in Atlanta talking about this versus the CDC being in China collecting some of this data?
The medical.
You think it's a political decision?
I think it's above the medical. I don't think the director of CDC is making that decision.
You think it's a political decision?
Well, I think it's, all I can say is I think it's above the director of CDC because I know he would love to have us a system.
China has accepted help from the World Health Organization. The CDC is waiting to hear whether it's going to be a part of that team. In the meantime, Redfield says his priority is to keep Americans safe.
Our whole issue right now is, as I said, aggressive containment.
They informed me that they were able to look at the raw data, and from their initial look, it did line up with much of the data that we were receiving. So we'll continue to ask the hard questions.
We'll continue to ask the hard questions. Will you?
We'll continue to call on China to even be more transparent than they've been. But I think.
Do you see how he leans in forward while he's raising his eyebrows? I can't believe him.
The president's decision to suspend all travel out of China.
Huge no, guys. This is. He's not being truthful.
They've been, but I think the president's decision to suspend all travel out of China and to establish a quarantine for Americans who are returning here should tell you everything you need to know about our overall concern about ensuring that what's been happening in China, which we have continued and will continue to offer American support and assistance for.
Mr. Vice President, this is about a vaccine. And if a...
This is about a vaccine, she says. And he says, it is. What? It's about a vaccine?
And assistance for.
Mr. Vice President, this is about a vaccine. And if a promising antiviral or a vaccine is developed, let's say it needs to pass government muster, are you willing to clear the pathways, the regulatory pathways of the FDA to get needed antivirals or vaccines to the American people? I mean, there's a bureaucratic process to go through with the FDA.
It's already doing it. Dr. Fauci made us aware a couple of days ago.
See that little grin? What would the little grin be for? What's funny about giving us a vaccine? What's happy about giving us your poison? I don't understand. I don't believe him.
Made us aware a couple of days ago that because of the expedited process that the FDA has approved, we're actually going to be able to go to clinical trials in 6 weeks on a vaccine for the coronavirus. As Dr. Fauci said, that's from the National Institute of Health, he said, that's utterly unprecedented.
Utterly unprecedented? Then how are we doing it? Is it because they've been working on this for 10 years? Because they knew this was going to happen? Or are we just going to give some vaccine that hasn't really been studied?
Now, I want your viewers to know that a vaccine will go through the process and will likely not be available for this season. But we're working very earnestly with multiple providers and for if the coronavirus, we will deal with it in this season. From prevention, from mitigation, from treatment. But as the next season comes on, if the coronavirus persists, then we're going to continue to work. We are clearing the red tape out of the way.
Are they? Are they clearing the red tape out of the way?
We are clearing the red tape out of the way. The FDA is providing great leadership on this front to have a vaccine for the American people by next year.
Mr. Vice President.